What's going on, folks? Ted from Immersion here, and I wanted to give you my thoughts and discuss a little bit about the live streams that happened yesterday with the D&D, Future of D&D panel, and a couple of other things discussed about that. First thing I want to address is all the comments and complaints about a reaction video being a reaction. If you want to see what the video was announced in that video, then go watch the half-an-hour live stream that Wizards of the Coast did and listen to it. I filmed a reaction live stream and then uploaded the highlights of a reaction live stream. That's what it is. If you don't like it, don't watch it. I don't care. Anyway, this is my formal thoughts, trying to do a little bit of critical thinking around the things that were said and what we can maybe extrapolate out from a couple of different things. So first of all, a couple of non-things dealing with 5.5e. We know that the Sage Advice column is returning. So this, I guess, will be part one, Sage Advice, right? The Sage Advice column is returning. So what the Sage Advice is, if you don't know, is basically a article or a series of conversations with Jeremy Crawford, lead rules designer for 5th edition. They've had Sage Advice in the past, but this is the current iteration, where he clarifies rules and questions. So they had a live stream where he just did that for basically an hour, and that'll be coming out. It sounds like probably this week, if it's not out already by the time of me uploading this video, which I will also cover, where they're going to address a bunch of issues and things that have cropped up in between there. And what they do is they don't release Sage Advice or errata, which, so the Sage Advice is sort of an answering, a clarification on a rule that people ask a lot of questions about. And then if something is so glaringly apparent, so many questions about it, that they think they need to errata it, which is where they basically take and release a free PDF that you can download that tells you, clarifies the rules or adjusts the wording, whether, you know, maybe it was just a simple grammatical change or maybe it was a complete oversight. For example, I remember one of the earliest errata was the removal and changing of 2 spells that didn't even exist but were listed in the spell lists for, like, the wizard. I forget what it was. There was a spell listed there that just didn't exist. So they had to obviously take that out so you're not looking for a spell that doesn't exist. I think Destructive Wave was also called Destructive Smite as an example, so they changed the name around. For 5th edition, they're only releasing errata documents when it coincides with a new printing of the book. So I think it's a little counterintuitive myself, but I get it from a business standpoint, where they're not going to put out an errata for a book until a physical version of that book exists in the world with those edits in it. So if you look in the inside cover of your player's handbook, you'll see that it'll say somewhere what the printing is. I don't know what the newest printing is that should be coming out, sounds like later this year. And they said a whole bunch of errata will be coming out with a whole slew of all of the new printings. So that will be coming out. That's one thing. So where we've seen the new D&D Studio blog posts, one of those is basically going to be, or a separate new one, will be a Sage Advice compendium, maybe monthly like series that we get, which will be nice. Also, it makes possibly some of the questions that you've had about rulings or different things, hopefully it will answer some of them. And I know that the blog post that's coming out will have a whole section dedicated to the Harengon and the way the different features of it work. So if you're waiting, just keep an eye out for that. All right, so that was Sage Advice, that out of the way. So let's talk about, you know what, let's just jump right in. Let's talk about, I'm going to call it 5.5e at the moment, okay? That's what I think is what I'm going to land on. It's probably not what they're going to call it, would be my guess. They might call it 5th edition Anniversary Edition, D&D 5e Plus, 5e Advanced, 5e Gold Standard. I don't know what you want to call it, 6th edition. But I don't think it's actually going to be something entirely new, because of the fact that they said it will be backwards compatible with all of the things that we already have. It can't be drastically different and still be backwards compatible. The best example I can provide to you for this that I know personally is 3.5 and 3e, though I have heard from several folks that there was sort of I don't know if it was 2e, like 1e to Advanced D&D was also sort of backwards compatible. I don't know if you also noticed, but during that entire conversation, Ray Winninger was wearing an Advanced Dungeons & Dragons t-shirt. I believe that was probably by design as an homage to what's going on here. But while there were edits and shifts and changes between, so again, you can get them on DriveThruRPG, you can probably find them in other ways, but if you were to grab a 3.5 edition Player's Handbook and a 3 edition Player's Handbook, you could flip through them side by side and see where the differences are. And please let me know if you're interested. I realize that obviously 3rd edition is not the same as 5th edition, but if you're curious, I can try to highlight some of the changes that happened between one full edition and a half edition and show you like how it could easily be backwards compatible. And I feel like a lot of people are up in arms about this, and I can understand why. Also, a ton of people are new to Dungeons and Dragons. This is something that I feel like a lot of people are not understanding. So many people are brand new to Dungeons and Dragons since 5th edition. They haven't lived through an edition change like many of us have, or in some cases, multiple edition changes. Most people, the newer fan base, have not played and seen the transitions from 1 to 2 to 3 to 4 to 5. So this is very scary for them. They've sunk money in, they just got into D&D, whatever the case may be, is they don't want to lose out on their investment. 5e is some of the strongest foundation from some of the strongest writers in the RPG space, so they didn't want to throw that away, right? The original core rulebook. Say what you will about people involved, but the people that did design what was the base of 5e is really strong skeleton and bones for it. So it makes sense to not go too far in a way that will be backwards compatible. So, a lot of you have said on my videos and in comments and things that I've made where I've done like fixing videos and stuff, why don't they just go back and update? For example, right, we've seen the 2 new sorcerers in Tasha's Cauldron of Everything got additional automatically known spells per level. One of the things that people say is one of the sorcerer's downfall is their limited spell selection. So the 2 sorcerer subclasses from Tasha's Cauldron rectified that. A lot of people had issues with the Ranger and how all of the new Rangers, everything since the Player's Handbook, got an additional spell per level of spells, rather than the Player's Handbook Rangers did not get those. We've seen what we would consider power creep in a lot of things. For example, look at the level 17 Forge Cleric ability versus the level 17 War Cleric ability. One is clearly... they have the same... I guess the Forge Cleric is the same thing as the War Cleric, but also immunity to fire damage. Like, big changes, right? And what a lot of us would refer to as power creep. And so many people have said, why don't they go back and update those to be in line with what is now new stuff? What about the subclasses that have hung out that they've left in the dirt from the Sword Coast Adventurers Guide? The Battle Rager, the Purple Dragon Knight, the couple of extra totems for the Totem Warrior Barbarian, right? Those are just like hanging out there, lost forever in the ether, and they probably will stay that way until these updated books. So rather than try and go back and update and provide an errata and add confusion by saying, hey, I'm going to be playing a sorcerer, but I'm going to be playing the 11th printing of the sorcerer, so it has these changes, and you're like, wait a minute, no, mine doesn't have that. And you're like, well, you're using the 8th printing, so obviously that's not the case. That's what they're trying to avoid, is that concept. So you can still continue to play 5th edition Dungeons & Dragons with all of the books that you have, and there's no problem. If you want the updated, improved, whatever it is, 5.5e set that comes out in 2024, you can go buy those. And I could still probably use those with a couple of minimal adjustments. Sorry, my YouTube notifications are still on. Thank you for subscribing if you haven't already. And you can use that to go back and update things. But like say I want to run Tomb of Annihilation using the new rule set, I can still use my Tomb of Annihilation set. I might have to tweak, do a little mental math because maybe the way monsters work is slightly different now in the newest version than it is there. But for the most part, it'll largely be reusable. But all of the things that we're talking about, that stuff is the stuff that I see changing in these new books. Balance and cohesive updates. Another really great example is look at any of the new feats or any of the new races that get spellcasting. The Fairy just came out in Wild Beyond the Witchlight is a perfect example. It gets Druidcraft as a cantrip and Fairy Fire and Enlarge Reduce. And it says you can cast these spells, each one of these spells, once per long rest with this ability. And then it also adds if you have spell slots of the appropriate level, you can use the spell slots to cast these spells, which is super nice because if I want to be a fairy that's a fighter and I don't have spell slots, well, then I have those 2 spells. But if I want to be a fairy wizard, I don't now have to prepare enlarge, reduce, or fairy fire. I get them. Or if you could do crazy combinations where you get access to spells you wouldn't normally have, right? Maybe I'm a paladin, a fairy paladin, and now I have access to fairy fire and enlarge, reduce, 2 spells I would never have. That's a great concept, and I love that change, that quality of life change. Go back and look at your tiefling from the player's handbook, or even your tieflings from Mordenkainen's Tome of Foes. You get all these cool spells, a cantrip and 2 spells per long rest, but you can't cast them with spell slots if you have them. Same thing with any feat that adds a new spell versus something like, say, Magic Initiate. These new spells, updated feats, updated races that we're going to get in this 5.5e will likely be updated to use these new mechanics where you can use your spell slots to cast those spells, adding a lot of variability to the game, which is great because that's a simple way for you to say be a wizard, let's say, that has access to Cure Wounds through one of these things, and now you can cast Cure Wounds with your spell slots. Now you're a wizard with a little bit of healing. Not a ton, but a little bit, and that can be fun. So this is what I think. These are the kinds of changes we're going to see. Maybe some updates to the armor and stuff like that, like why does padded armor exist? It's kind of pointless. Maybe we'll get to see a little bit of an expansion in there. Maybe some diversification of the weapons a little bit to make things a little bit more unique and interesting. There's a lot of people commenting on stuff like that. For example, another great one, they added Spear, got added to Polearm Master in like the 6th printing of the book. If you go back to my OG first printing of the Player's Handbook, Polearm Master doesn't work on spears. It doesn't list it as an item that you can use it on. However, if you go and look at the newer printings, it does. That's a change, and that's kind of that disparity that we're talking about between different printings of a book to avoid that confusion. The fact that they changed the way elves' long rests work from the original printing to the new one to it just being a way you could short rest, get a long rest, sleep for 4 hours, but you still needed to have 8 hours total to get the benefits of a long rest, to being changed to just being a 4-hour long rest. Different mechanics, things have changed in printings. This will be a way to quantify that, and that's why they were asking all of those questions in those 2 surveys that we took about the Player's Handbook races and the Player's Handbook classes. They want all of that feedback so they can say, people really love this about the Lore Bard, but people really hate this about the Valor Bard. How can we even them out? Things like that. Now, will this just be a reprinting of the core rules, or will this take it a step further? Will we get a massive tome that is everything that was included in the Player's Handbook, plus all of the subclasses from Xanathar's and Tasha's, all combined into one new Player's Handbook 2, Player's Handbook 5.5e? I don't know. But these are things we can speculate on, and we'll have to keep an eye on what Wizards of the Coast puts out over the next couple of years. By the way, reminder, this is in 2024. It is September of 2021. We have at least 2.5 to 3 years before they see any of this stuff. Interesting that they announced it now. I also, I'll take a little sidebar here. I don't love that Wizards of the Coast on the Dungeons and Dragons side just doesn't give us a roadmap. Like, you look at the Magic the Gathering side, and they're like, we're going to have this set drops here, this set drops here, and this set drops here. And we give you a timeline of when everything's going to happen. They don't really give us that on the WotC or the D&D side of things. They just like to keep everything in the dark, and like I get that there's some mystique about it, and that can be fun, but yeah, I don't particularly love that. I would love just a nice, simple roadmap that spells it all out for me. So that's what I think we're going to get in our 5.5e, right? That's the plan. We're going to get updated, consolidated, changes, quality of life, that kind of a thing. So that's that. Now let's talk about this gift set that's coming out in January. Now, I do have an email from some folks at the PR team from Wizards of the Coast. It doesn't indeed say that they were planning to release it before the holidays this year as a coming out of a holiday release, but due to the delays in the industry and the world right now, they pushed it back to January. So, let's see. That's a quick way to create a library of setting agnostic materials for their D&D games. So this is going to be this new book. It's a slipcase, 3 books. It's a updated printed version of Xanathar's Guide to Everything, which may have new errata, Tasha's Cauldron of Everything, which also may have errata, and this new book called Mordenkainen Presents Monsters of the Multiverse. And what this is, let's see, we revisited the content in Monsters of the Multiverse so that it plays even better than it did before. Many of the monsters have new abilities and new bits of lore, which will make them even more fun to include in your campaigns. We also shifted the lore focus so that the material is relevant no matter where you play D&D in the multiverse, not just the Forgotten Realms. Oh, here you go. We got some information here. Monsters of the Multiverse contains more than 250 monster stat blocks and over 30 playable races from various sources, including Volo's Guide to Monsters, the Tortle Package, and Mordenkainen's Tome of Foes. In the Future of D&D panel VOD available, which we can put a link in the description, Jeremy walked fans through what it's like changing the presentation of stat blocks, and we showed that in the video that I did, and then we watched it live, where they're basically like, rather than giving you the listed out spell slots, they give you a spellcasting action, cleaning things up, making it easier for DMs to do. The updated content in Monsters of the Multiverse will be available for purchase on digital platforms when the book is available as a standalone. So currently it is not, as fans can continue to use older content from previous releases, but a purchase of Monsters of the Multiverse is necessary to access all new and updated content. More information on all the ways Monsters of the Multiverse improves gameplay will be released in the coming months. We do also have a product page on the WotC website, which we can go look at, and then obviously we can go and check out the panels if we'd like to. So here, I'm going to show you this here. Rules Expansion Gift Set. Here's the standard box. Also, a lot of you have pointed out, and you'll notice that a lot of it is recycled art, not recycled, but it's art that they commissioned for the Adventures in the Forgotten Realms Magic the Gathering set, which, by the way, is all stunningly fantastic art that they are reiterating and reusing to be in these D&D books, further integrating Magic the Gathering and Dungeons & Dragons, something that I anticipated would be something we'd see out the gate whenever a new edition launched, so maybe we'll see more of that when 5.5e launches. So $169 is the price tag for Monsters of the Multiverse. It says, includes the debut of Monsters of the Multiverse, a comprehensive resource for players and DMs alike, containing over 30 updated player character races, and a massive bestiary with over 250 redesigned monsters and stat blocks. Each of the 3 books in the DM screen feature special foil covers, available only with this release, a perfect set for players and DMs looking to expand their game with additional rules. And then here is the updated, I love the Tasha art, by the way. I really, really like this. I don't know why, but I do. And here's the sort of the art here, and then here's the other art for the standard edition. By the way, folks, if you don't know and you don't know me, I will 100% be doing a giveaway of at least one of those, if not both of those, when they launch, because I always do giveaways of all of the newest products from Dungeons & Dragons. So, that being said, it said updated player character races. Now, I want to point out a couple of things. One, kobolds did not make it into Fizban's. The updated version of the kobolds from the Unearthed Arcana did not make it into Fizban's Treasury of Dragons. However, the updated version of the kobold may arrive in Mordenkainen's Monsters of the Multiverse. The Hobgoblin of the Feywild did not make it into Wild Beyond the Witchlight, and there was a tweet going around from somebody on the D&D team that said it was being play-tested for use in a release next year. Now, that could be something coming next year in the form of a campaign setting, or it could be in this book. So, I did some thought, did a little thinking, and I wanted to show you guys what I came up with. So, it said, the email that I had said the Tortle Package, Volo's Guide to Monsters, and so on, and there's supposed to be 30 races that are setting agnostic. So nothing too tied to the lore of a specific world, right? So I made a spreadsheet here, and I'll show you this right here. We'll zoom it in. So what I did was, why is that not zooming? Okay, well, we'll do it this way then. Zoom. Okay, so here's our player's handbook races: Dragonborn, Dwarf, Elf, Gnome, Half-Elf, Halfling, Half-Orc, Human, Tiefling. And then these are what I was able to come up with, what I feel like were non-setting specific races: Aarakocra, Azamar, Bugbear, Fairy, Furbolg, Janazi, Gith, Goblin, Goliath, Grung, Harengon, Hobgoblin, Kenku, Kobold, Lizardfolk, Lokatha, Orc, Tabaxi, Tortle, Triton, Yuan-Ti, Pureblood. So that is a total of 21. Now, there's nothing to say. The way they wrote it makes me think that it's not going to be any new races in this Mordenkainen's Monsters of the Multiverse. It will only be existing ones we've already seen. So I realized that I put Fairy and Harengon on here. I'm not 100% positive that they will be in there, but they're not a Fairy and a Harengon. This is just like a rabbit folk person. I know it's coming in Wild Beyond the Witchlight. Does not mean that they're tied to just the Feywild. We have the Verdan race from the Acquisitions Incorporated thing, which was set in the Forgotten Realms. It's technically not system specific, but the lore behind the Verdan is kind of, so I don't know. Mythic Odysseys of Theros gave us the Leonin and the Satyr. Now, I would argue that Leonin are specific to Theros, but Satyrs are not. We have Eberron, which gives us Changeling, which could maybe not be. The dragon-marked races, which is very Eberron-specific. We have several elf variants. The Kalishtar, the Shifter, and the Warforged. Now, I would argue that the Kalishtar, Shifter, and Warforged are Eberron-specific, but people might argue with me against that. And then Ravnica gave us Centaur, Loxodon, Minotaur, Simic Hybrid, and Vidalcan. I would say that the Centaur and the Minotaur are not necessarily setting-specific, so we could probably port the Satyr, Centaur, and Minotaur over, which would put us at 24. The other thing that's interesting is the concept of sub-races. We have several sub-races that were contained in other things. We have the Dankwood Goblin from the Adventures in Muck series. We have the Dwergar Dwarf, which was included in, I know it definitely came in Sword Coast Adventures Guide. The Eladrin Elf from Mordenkainen's Tome of Foes. The Feral Tiefling from Sword Coast Adventures Guide. The new updated Dragonborn that are going to be contained in Fizzbands. The Ghostwise Halfling from Sword Coast Adventures Guide. The various half-elf variants from Sword Coast Adventures Guide. That's supposed to be Lotus Den Halfling, which is from Explorer's Guide to Wildmount. I'd argue that that's specific, so I would say no. The 8 different variant Tieflings from Mordenkainen's Tome of Foes. The Pallid Elf, which is also, again, Explorer's Guide to Wildmount. The Sea Elf and the Shatterkai Elf from Mordenkainen's Tome of Foes. The Svirfneblin Gnome, which appeared, I think, in Elemental Evil Player's Companion, as well as Sword Coast Adventures Guide. The 3 Lineages from Van Richten's Guide are technically not specific to any plane, so I think they would be a good thing to include. And also the variant Tiefling options from the Sword Coast Adventures Guide. So this is pretty much every race that I've been able to find canonical to a 5th edition resource. I want to know your list of 30 in the comments down below. I think we're pretty good with these 24 here, the Satyr, Centaur, Minotaur, and probably the 3 Lineages from Van Richten's. I don't know if they'll count as 1 or 3, but that gets us to about 20, what does that get us to, 27? So we could maybe fit something else in there, I'm not sure. All right, so that gets us through the stuff for the expanded rules expansion gift set. So there's only a few other little outliers to talk about, and that is what we have coming after this. We know from previous tweets from Ray Winninger, I've done videos on them, but basically we are going to be seeing some 2 classic campaign settings return next year, according to him from this Future of D&D panel, with a peak at a 3rd. Then there's going to be a new other classic campaign setting coming in 2023. Whether that is the same one that we will be getting the sneak peek of next year or an entirely new one, I don't know. He also said that these will be coming to us in formats we've never seen before for 5th edition, confirmed that it's not box sets, soft cover, or hardcover. So I think this is indeed, to go along with the, no pun intended, Indeed posts from Wizards of the Coast for digital content managers, that this is their new WotC virtual tabletop. Whether this is the death of Roll20, D&D Beyond, or other things associated with that, I can't confirm. I don't really know anything about it. I really don't. I would tell you if I did. But as someone who sunk a lot of money into D&D Beyond myself, I would be a little upset if that got lost in the wash as well. We also know from Chris Perkins that 2 all-new settings may be debuting next year, which is something that I'm most excited about. According to Chris in the interview, he said that this is the first time since 2004, with the introduction of Keith Baker's Eberron, have we seen brand new, wholly new systems. Now, he also said that they were looking, keep your ears open next month, as they're going to be talking about something coming, something new, which I thought he was talking about the virtual tabletop. but I think he actually might mean one of the new settings, or D&D is going to a place it has never gone before, which the only thing I could think of for that is modern setting, or a specific setting in the far realm. We've seen kind of stuff via Spelljammer and stuff like that, or Planescape, but they said they're going to a place they've never gone before. The only thing, like I said, I could think of that they've never ever done is a true canonical Wizards of the Coast modern setting. I could be wrong, but that's something I've thought of as well. And there's still the one returning to one campaign setting that they have done in the past. I still have a feeling that that might be Critical Role related, but we'll see. It could be Forgotten Realms, it could be Eberron again, but I think if you're trying to make money and possibly generate hype again as you're building up to a new edition, Critical Role seems like the no-brainer. Again, they talked about there's going to be a bunch of fan contribution, so maybe open play testing, or it might just be more testing via Unearthed Arcana. I think that's pretty much everything that was covered. Obviously, we'll keep an eye out for Unearthed Arcana and blog posts as time goes on, and we'll continue to cover those as best we can. I am still curious about what this new product is. Are they going to buy D&D Beyond from fandom? Are they going to take a portion of stuff? And the last thing, the elephant in the room, is my comments about how I've heard rumors that 5.5e will not have an open gaming license. And what I mean by that is right now, third parties can make millions of dollars making content for 5th edition by using what's contained in the open game license. You would still be able to do that with 5th edition, but any of the updated, nuanced classes and changes and stuff that will come in 5.5e, I think the only way you're going to be able to do that is by publishing them through the DMs Guild, which is Wizards of the Coast owned. They take 50% of the profit of your stuff right off the top, but if you want to use the new content, you're going to have to use our platform, which is a super smart business decision, and then your options are either use the new stuff that everybody likes and the fun new thing, and publish it through the DMs Guild, or use the old stuff in 5e and you can make your Kickstarters and make all your money yourself, but just know that it's not the freshest, newest stuff that a lot of people were probably going to gravitate towards. And then we have this whole thing with Boo from Mink's companion from Baldur's Gate, which looked like he might have beholder eyes behind him, so it might be a multiverse Planescape thing, might be the Far Realm. I don't know. All I can say is thank you for coming along with this journey with me. Also, this means that my job here as Ted from Nerd Immersion covering D&D related stuff is not going anywhere, and I'll be here with you for the years to come as we learn and go on this journey together. So, grab your gear, folks. Let's head over to the tavern, and we're going to head out on this journey together over the next 3 years as we see what the future of Dungeons & Dragons has in store for us. And, as always, I'll see you next time.